the ego is embedded in duality. It has a split mind. It considers the world to be separate and objective and different from consciousness and outside of consciousness, even though it's very clear that nothing is outside consciousness. You couldn't know anything that was outside your consciousness. But there's a belief, and it's a religious belief that's called science, but it's a religion, that we are actually in a world that exists independently of us. Because consciousness is identified with bodies, and bodies are temporary phenomena that come and go in the world. They are part of the impermanence of the flux of time. But the consciousness remains present, even though it becomes unaware of its presence because it becomes lost in thought. And as soon as your consciousness becomes lost in thought, and you believe that that thought is what you are, I think, therefore I am, as soon as you become lost in that, you live in the past and the present, because thought is all about that. Wishing that the past was still here, or that it didn't happen, but having some relationship, nostalgic or horrified by the past, and some fantasy about the future that is either positive, hopeful, or negative and fearful. But the ego is always ping-ponging between these and is never present. And so it feels a lack of being, because being, the real, is only presence. And the ego never knows presence, because in the present it dissolves, it dissipates. And so the mind continually chatters because it is terrified of its own dissolution, its disappearance into a presence that is so awesome and so full of energies that the ego cannot tolerate it. It cannot tolerate the bliss that would show up if you remained present for an extended period. The ego would begin to dissolve, and all that would remain is presence. This is the whole point of meditation, but very few people meditate in such a way that the presence remains consistent and unbroken long enough to dissolve the sanskaras, the latent tendencies of the ego mind, so that the ego pops back after the meditative formality and is never dislodged from its fictional condition as a character. But the presence that is beyond the fictional entity that one comes to believe one is, because the belief that the mind has reality and represents one takes over as the implicit religion of the ego itself, that cannot be undone or seen through by the ego, because it is based upon that, and it dreads its knowing its own lack of reality, of essence. So it is only in moments of trauma, when one becomes speechless, that one knows presence, or moments of divine love, or being hit by a lightning bolt of Shakti, or one is filled with that supreme presence to the point where the ego dissolves completely, that one has the sense of what the real truly is. There is a recognition that when you enter a state of total presence, you enter a higher dimension in which the apparent flow of time is entirely here. There is no past and no future, even though there is history and there is the apparent shift. But actually, it's an illusion because consciousness is present throughout it all, and that presence is always here and now. And so all of time is present in every moment, in the same way that the entire ocean is contained in every drop. You are a microcosm of the macrocosm, but all of your past and future lives and all of your experiences are present in every moment if you are silent and still enough to perceive all of that information. It's there, but it's too subtle for the ego mind, which is chattering, to pay attention to.